We got a question here. Twix wants to know, will you review the Hota F6 Plus anytime soon? Sure, I'll review it right now. Let's review it. Hota F6 Plus. Who's this guy? Oscar Leong. Why is he showing up at the top of the search result? Huh. Race day quads. Hota F6. F6 Plus. Okay, I see. So it's a quad channel, 1,000 watt, with a built-in power supply. That's interesting. Is it 1,000 watts is 200? So let's DC input port is XT90. Wow. Sheesh. DC input must be used to achieve the full 1,000 watts. Still 500 watts is good. 500 watts on the built-in AC power supply is good. I'm pretty sure that the Hota D6 only does like 250 watts. So 500 watts is excellent for a charger with a built-in for the built-in power supply. 250, well, yeah, so it's going to be like 125. 125 watts times 4 channels is plenty to charge the typical mini quad batteries. 185 bucks. That's a little expensive, but it's a 4-channel 500 watt charger with a built-in power supply. That's okay. Hota makes good stuff. The F6 has been a good charger, but it didn't have a built-in power supply. The good quality chargers, like they hold up, they perform, they meet their specs, they're reliable. I think the question would be, well, number one, do I definitely need a 4-channel charger? Right? It can take a DC input, but let's be honest, if you're buying this charger, if you want a 1,000 watt DC input charger, you can get one cheaper than this. So you're buying this for the AC power supply. I would compare it to the Hota S6. The Hota S6. There's this Oscar Long guy again. Interesting. The Hota S6 is 400 watts DC, 325 watts. Dual channel, 325 watts times 2? AC 400 watts. Okay, so AC 400 watts versus AC 500 watts. That's interesting. Does this go to, it's only 6S. Why is this one 185 versus 170? It's only $15 more. The F6 Plus looks like it's $15 more than the S6 and has 4 channels instead of 2 and a little bit higher output. That seems like a no-brainer. It seems like the F6 Plus is easily worth the extra 15 bucks. You get twice the channels and 100 more watts. It's probably bigger, right? It's bigger. So maybe you care about that, but no, it's like it's a lot bigger. Yeah. I think that's a very compelling option, to be honest. Why not compare the F6 AC to the F6 DC plus a power supply? I mean, we could do that. But $128. So 130 bucks. 185, 130. So it's $55 more for the F6 Plus, and you get a 500 watt power supply. Like, in any world, a 500 watt power supply is worth 50, 55 bucks. There was a time where you could get like a 1,000 watt rack mount power supply refurbished for 40 bucks. Those days are gone. And this is a good quality power supply. Hota makes pretty good. I mean, their stuff is pretty reliable. Whereas if you were to buy some $50 500 watt power supply, I think you'd be getting some Chinese special that maybe wouldn't have the same quality. Yeah. 250 watts quad channel. Is that 250 watts per channel? Is that per channel? It says surely it's more than 250 watts per total, each at 250 watts. Yeah, so the F6 is also 1,000 watts DC, but without a built-in power supply. Alejandro Gallo says I use the Race Day Quads 400 power supply. It's 40 bucks, yeah, but it's also a China special. You know. And it's only 400 watts. I think the Hota F6 is pretty compelling. Whether you compare it against something like the S6, like what about the D6 Duo or D6 Pro? Not the Ethics version with the $10 Mr. Steel tax. 125 bucks for, what does it do? 200 watts. So the D6 Pro is 200 watts for one channel or 100 watts per two channels. It's basically 200 watts between both of the channels and is only $125. So it's significantly lower output. It's also significantly smaller and cheaper. I think that's pretty compelling. Yeah. I think the F6 Plus, unless you care a lot about the size, the F6 Plus looks like it shoots right at the S6 and just knocks it out. And even compared to something like the F6 with a standalone power supply, I think the F6 Plus is pretty compelling. So, yeah. There's my mini review of the Hota F6 Plus. And that's what I would say if they sent me one and I tested it. Frankly, I think most of the time you can review a charger just by looking at the specs and knowing the company that made it, right? Because if you were to send me a charger and I were to like test it, well, that's the sample size of one, right? So who knows what that's going to mean, you know? I mean, obviously I would test it, but generally you take a company like Hota or HobbyMate, same company, I think. You take a company like that has a history of making good, reliable chargers, and then you look at their next charger and you go, okay, well, let's presume that the software is going to work and it's going to be reliable, and then you just look at the specs and basically review it.